Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jimmy. We're trying something brand new today. We've got a weekly podcast that we put out that you can download on iTunes or Android, and it's audio only. And I've had a few people ask me to do a video version of a podcast. Now, I've seen a number of people that have done video versions that are actually really cool. It's like this enhanced version where you see videos and pictures of the games that are being talked about. I would absolutely love to do that, but I don't have any more time. I'm tapped out. Just doing a weekly podcast and a weekly video on YouTube is about all that I can get, especially since we don't get paid to do this. This is just a hobby that Rod and I do. And so this is about it. But I wanted to try to be accommodating. I wanted to try to add some value in a different way. Maybe you can't listen through a podcast. Maybe that's too confusing or you don't get it, but you would watch a YouTube video or a Facebook video. So we're going to try that. So every week I'm going to kind of give you just a little wave. Hey, how's it going? And then I'm going to toss you over to the audio version so you can minimize that and listen to it while you're at work. And if you have any questions, you can always comment right on that video and ask us about it, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's it. That's my intro for what we're doing today. Please let me know if this is something that you want us to keep doing, and we'll keep doing it. So anyways, enjoy the podcast today.
On this episode of the Board Game Closet podcast, we talk about games like Captain Sonar, Codenames Pictures, and Factory Fun. We do an interview with Ian Schofield and Ravage and Brian Hank with Barker's Row. And our main topic is Teach Me to Play. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Board Game Closet podcast. We'll talk about board games, card games, and more. Find out more at BoardGameCloset.com. Now, here's your host, Jimmy Hudson.
Welcome back to the Board Game Closet podcast. My name's Jimmy, and this is episode number 18. I hope your day is going good wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, and let's take some time to talk about great board games. On this episode, I've got an interview with Ian Schofield. He's a guy across the pond over in the UK, and he talks about his newest game on Kickstarter called Ravage. Now, what's unique about this guy is he actually did the artwork, the design, the creator, everything with this game. And when you go onto the Kickstarter and check it out, I think you'll be impressed. I follow up with Brian Hank from Overworld Games as we talk about Barker's Row, and he shares a little bit about their next project that's coming up soon with an IP you might be familiar with. The games that I'm going to talk about today are games that I got to play with my local gaming group this past weekend. They came over, and these were the actual 3 games that hit the table, so these are pretty recent. Some of them are new, and I'm excited to talk about these, so here we go. All right, some upcoming videos from the Board Game Closet. This Thursday, you can find us on YouTube as we talk about Captain Sonar. Now, obviously, in this episode, I'm going to be mentioning it, so I can kind of get you pumped up for it, and then on Thursday, you can see it. I'm going to give you my opinion a lot on it today, but then on Thursday, we'll give you our official buy it, play it, hate it rating. And you can see up close video of the components and kind of see how all that works. If my explanation today doesn't make any sense, so you'll check back then. That'll be on Thursday. Okay, the first game that I want to talk about today is Captain Sonar. Now, when I first saw this game, I was so excited about it. I loved playing Battleship as a kid, but got bored with it. You know, you play this game and it's the same thing. B4, nope, you missed. B7, okay, you hit me. And it would go back and forth, and as a kid, it created these opportunities in your imagination to think of something great and awesome that was going to happen, but it really never played into that. Now, I remember when they came out with electronic Battleship, hold the horses. I mean, we're talking electronic, you know, back in the 90s and 2000s, like this was big stuff, you know? And so you were a cool kid on the block if you had the electronic version of Battleship. This was designed by Roberto Fraga and Johan Lomaner. Plays 2 to 8 people in about 45 to 60 minutes. So let me tell you all about this goodness. In the box, you're going to get a divider. So this divider is actually folds out, and it's going to stand up vertically on the table, and it's going to split your table into 2. and you are going to have two competing submarines that are battling it out. Now, the theme is that it's 2048, and you are running a top of the line, best ever elite submarine. And your job is to literally go out, find the other guys, and destroy them. That's the theme. And it totally comes through in this game. You are going to divide up your submarine responsibilities between up to 4 people. So if you have less than 4 people, then somebody's going to be doing double duty. And don't worry, it's not that complicated. But here are the 4 jobs that you could have on your submarine. You can be the captain, you can be the engineer, you can be the first mate, or the radio operator. And the best way for me to describe how to play this game is to just tell you what you're going to be doing if you are each one of these roles. So if you are the captain, you get to call out directions. You get to say north, south, east, or west. That's the only options that you have as far as directions go. If you are the captain, you get to trigger mines and you get to launch torpedoes, and then you get to answer questions. If the other team launches a torpedo, you get to say whether it hit you, and that could be a miss, or it could be a hit, or an indirect hit, or a direct hit. And the same thing with mines. You could say, nope, you totally missed me. Or you could say, yes, you hit me. It was a direct hit, or it was an indirect hit. And then the other thing that the captain does is there's something called drones and sonar. And so you get to respond and tell them the answers to that question. If you are the engineer, then you get to listen for directions from the captain. So the captain calls out north or south or east or west. And on your little board, you have a diagram of the ship, and it's divided into 4 sections, north, south, east, and west. And in each one of those sections, they have different symbols. And without getting overly complicated, just basically know that you're going to be crossing off symbols in each one of these sections. So if the captain called out east, you would go to the east section, and then you would cross out a section, a symbol on your little board. And this has everything to do with what the first mate does. So the first mate is the guy that is going to be trying to launch things or trying to fill up the opportunity to launch something. So let's say that you wanted to launch a mine. Well, every time that the captain calls out a direction, you get to make a little X on one of these sections. And so for a mine, I think you have to fill up 2 spots. So he calls out north, and you say, okay, we need to get a mine ready. So you mark off one of the sections for mine. And once the mine is all full up, then you can tell the captain, whenever you want, we can launch a mine. You can do the same thing for a torpedo, and the torpedo has like 3 sections. So it takes a little bit longer to fill up the torpedo spot, but you can fill up 3 spots for the tornado, and then you tell the captain, we're ready to launch a torpedo. Or maybe you don't want to say that out loud because the other dudes are listening, but you could just kind of show him, hey, we're ready to launch a torpedo. The other things that he could fill up are sonar, which sonar, once you say, hey, we're ready to do the sonar, then the other team has to do something cool. They have to tell you a row and a column or sector. So the maps are divided into a different amount of sectors. And so you can say, we're on row B, sector 4. Well, the catch is one of those things is true and one of those things is false. So you're like, well, could they be in sector 4 or are they on row B, or is it row B or sector 4? And so you kind of have to differentiate and try to figure out which one of those points of data is actually correct. And then the drone does something different. The drone, you call out and you say, are you in sector number 2? And they have to tell you if it's true or not. Yes, I'm in sector 2, or no, I'm not. And so that can kind of help you figure out where they're at on the map, because the last job is the radio operator. And I think this is the coolest job, where the radio operator has this transparent piece of plastic, and every time you call out a direction like north, they get to mark it down on their little piece of paper, on their little transparent piece of plastic. And so what they do with that transparent piece of plastic is after a while, they've started charting out a course on where you have been, the opposing team has been. And then they can lay that down on top of their map and try to figure out where in the world you are. Because there's a couple rules that you have to follow when you are navigating your ship, if you're the captain. One is that you can't cross over any islands. So islands become pillars or barriers. And so if you're the radio operator, you could lay out your map and say, no, he couldn't have gone through there because he would be going across an island, so he can't be there. The other rule that you have to follow when you are the captain is that you can't cross your path. And so you can't ever cross back over. You can't go backwards. You can't go around and loop around or something. So you always have to kind of make a straight path and curve around and do U shapes and S shapes and all of that kind of thing. So the radio operator, the longer the other team goes, the easier it is to kind of pinpoint where they're at, because there's only so many places that your path could go without breaking the rules. Now, the only difference here is that if you ever surface, which you can, you get to erase your path, and now you can go backwards. You can go any direction that you want. But the catch is if you surface, then the other team gets to move 3 times or take 3 turns before you get to move again. So this is the penalty for surfacing, but you get the ability now to go anywhere that you want. And so that's really all that this game is. You can play it 2 different ways. You can play it simultaneously, where everybody's doing the same thing all at the same time, and play only pauses when a captain says that he launches or torpedo or he triggers a mine. That's the only time that anything pauses, and then you resolve that, and then you dive right back into it, and it is simultaneously played. And then the other way that you can do it is a little bit more laid back, and it's turn by turn. So you go, kind of conversate, they go, kind of conversate, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth. So there's 2 different ways to play this, and it all depends on your opinion on what you want the game experience to be like. Kind of laid back and let's hunt this dude down, or do you want the crazy, chaotic experience of all real time, let's just go at it, shoot some torpedoes? I just can't say enough good about this game. This is the party game that doesn't feel like a party game that I've always needed. Now, if you're into board games at all, you'll quickly probably get tired of games that are just the old school apples to apples and charades and all that kind of stuff. And so you're looking for something else that would be engaging and thematic and fun. This is the game. This is it. I was so excited to get this game and play it. We finally got it to the table, and I have loved it, and I just can't recommend this one enough. So go out, get this game, try it out. They have tons of different maps that you can go, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie maps. It goes all the way up to whatever E is, Echo or something like that. And so the difficulty gets harder with these maps, so the replayability is there. Swapping positions, maybe you're the captain, next time be the radio operator, be the engineer. You can just do different jobs in this. You can play with different people. The replayability on this game is so much fun. It's very tense as you're going back and forth, this hide and seek kind of thing. Sometimes when you think you know that they're there and then you don't, then you realize they're not there, and oh man, I bet they know where we are. It's just a lot of fun. It creates a lot of great memories and a lot of talking. This is a great game, so go pick it up. It's Captain Sonar. All right, so let's talk about Codenames Pictures. If you're not familiar with this game, there was an original version that came out that was just called Codenames. And it was basically a word association game, kind of go old school like the TV show Password, where you are trying to give a clue where somebody can figure something out with just a 1-word clue. And that's what happens in Codenames. The thematic background to this, although it's light, there's still a theme there, is that you are a spy master trying to give clues to agents out in the field. And they have to go and have a rendezvous, a meetup with some of these other agents. And so you're trying to do that as quickly as possible because the opposing team is trying to do the same. So in Codenames and Codenames Pictures, what happens is they put these cards out onto the table in a grid setup. And in Codenames, it was just a single word, but in Codenames Pictures, the version that I'm talking about today, there are pictures instead of words. And so it's this grid of pictures, and these pictures are not normal pictures. It's not just a picture of a bowling ball and some pins. It's a picture of bowling pins and a bowling ball that is also a bomb, or that's not just a picture of a tooth fairy, but it's a picture of a tooth fairy carrying a pair of pliers, or a picture of pyramids with snow on top of them. So these pictures are not just normal things or items, but it's very interesting pictures. Not too crazy like Dixit, but different enough that there's something extra on the picture for you to use when you're giving out a clue. So how do you play the game? On your turn, you are going to pick a 1-word clue and then a number. When you give out a clue to your teammates, you're going to basically be saying that there are some cards out on the field that connect to this one clue that I'm going to give you. And the clue could be like adventure or danger or something like that. And then you give them a number. So you give them one clue and then a number. And that number corresponds to how many pictures out on the table have to relate to that clue. So if you gave them the word turtle and then 3, there are 3 pictures out on the table that have to connect, that can connect to the word turtle. Then your team has the opportunity now to try to pick which pictures out on the table have to connect to the word turtle. So they'll go one at a time and they'll pick this one, and so maybe it's like I don't know what it might be, an ant crawling, or it could be a turtle itself, whatever it might be. And so you're like, well, ants move kind of slow like turtles do, and so they would put their finger on the ants, and then you would say yes or no. And so what happens is you would either put out you would cover up that with your agent's color, and you say, yep, we got it right. Or maybe you got it wrong and it was the other team's agent, and so then they would reach out and cover it up. If you get it right, then you can continue making guesses and covering up these cards and getting closer to winning. But if you ever get it wrong, whether that's by choosing the opposing team's agent, or you could choose a bystander, which means it's nobody's agent, but it's going to end your turn, and so you would cover it up. Or the worst way to end your turn is by choosing the assassin. So there's one picture out on the field that is the assassin, and if you choose that card, then the game ends, you lose completely, and the other people win. And so when you're trying to give clues, not only are you trying to pick as many possible cards out on the field that would connect to your clue, but you're also trying to avoid the assassin, and you're trying to avoid bystanders, and you're trying to avoid the other team's agents. So when you're trying to come up with a clue, you have a lot to think about. And the first few times that you play this game, if you're not the clue giver, then you're going to be like, what's taking this guy so long? Like, this is not that complicated. But the first time you become a spy master and you are giving out the clues, you'll be like, how in the world am I going to connect all these things together and avoid the assassin and not mess with the other team's agents? It's not as easy as it looks, but it is a ton of fun. So I actually enjoy the pictures version of this game. Now that I've played this a whole bunch, I actually think I enjoy the pictures version better because of the expansion of being able to use all the different aspects that the pictures bring it. So this is another great party game that I would highly recommend because it's just simple, it's relatively inexpensive, and plays a lot. I always get asked to bring this one to get-togethers with my family, so check this out. It's Codenames Pictures. All right, the last game that I want to play is a game that I didn't really enjoy, but I need to tell you about it anyways. This is Factory Fun. Came out in 2006, is designed by Corné van Moorsel, plays 2 to 5 people in roughly 45 minutes. In Factory Fun, you get to be the owner, manager, designer of a factory. And so you start out the game with this blank slate, and it's just a factory floor that only has a single pillar in the middle of the room. And what you're going to be doing on your turn is everybody reaches into the middle and they flip over a machine tile. And then there is this mad scramble of a thing where everybody gets to choose a tile as quickly as they can. And this tile is a machine tile. And this machine tile will give you points both during the game and at the end of the game. And so on your turn, you get to grab a tile as quickly as possible. It's kind of frantic. And then you get to place it down onto your factory floor. And now there's some rules on placement. The first thing is that it always has to be connected to an input source, a reservoir. And it also has to be connected to an output source, a place where you're going to store whatever it is these machines make. They never really tell you, and so we just get to make up in our minds what these reservoirs are creating. And so you get to connect it to these different color reservoirs, and each one of these machines have different intake colors that you have to connect to them in order to output something. And so the game goes back and forth where you keep drawing tiles, and there are these connector pieces that connect and kind of circle around, but you're really trying to figure out this puzzle of here's the piece that I've drawn, and now how do I make it work on my board? Now, there is limitations because you're using money throughout the game, so you can't just move your thing around any way that you want. And although you can buy extra pipes to connect things, if you ever run out of money, then you can't do that. And so if ever on your turn you cannot figure out the puzzle of how to connect the inputs to the outputs, then you're going to lose 5 points on that turn. And so that's a bad thing. I believe that this plays out 8 to 10 rounds. I can't remember offhand, but you basically just keep going back and forth, adding machines. Now, every time that a machine is connected to another machine, you get to do a multiplier effect that's going to add up at the end of the game. So you just go back and forth, grabbing a new tile frantically, putting it down onto your board and trying to figure out how to make all of these machines feed into each other. This game, although it sounded like it would be something that I would really love, the puzzle aspect, trying to figure out how to make all these machines work into each other, it just really fell flat for us. Now, I'll be honest with you, when we first started to try to figure this game out, we completely misread the rules. I forgot something, and so we got frustrated at the beginning. But then once we figured out how to play the game and what we were doing wrong, by then I think it was too far gone, and it didn't pull us back into it. There really wasn't nothing overly redeeming about this game to overcome my misstep of misunderstanding the rules, of not understanding the rules. And so there wasn't really anything that brought us back and said, man, this is a whole lot of fun. We just never really had that. And so I'm sure a lot of people have made the same critique, but I didn't have a whole lot of fun playing Factory Fun. So if you enjoy puzzles, if you enjoy the franticness of trying to pick the right one at the beginning of a turn, kind of like Galaxy Trucker or Space Alert, it's just this franticness at the beginning. If you don't enjoy any of that, then you probably won't enjoy this. There just wasn't enough puzzle on this for me to enjoy it, but maybe you'll like it. So go online and find Factory Fun. All right, recently I was able to catch up again with my friend Brian Hank at Overworld Games, and we talked about all things Barker's Row. So here we go, let's dive back into this interview. The first question that I asked Brian was about the artwork that came with Barker's Row. How are people responding to this unique style of artwork?
Yeah, the artwork is something that really, it's the first thing you notice on the campaign, really, and it's different. It's different than most board game art. It's a little darker, a little creepier, a little more so than we expected. But we wanted to let Andrea Olgiati, he's the artist, we wanted to let him go wild, let his creativity drive him to a point. I mean, we don't want to go crazy. We still have a vision for the game, and we want to make sure it fits that. But we want to give him a lot of flexibility to do what he wants to do with this. And so he's done a fantastic job. I mean, we're super, super happy with how it looks. It really brings people in, gets people excited about the campaign and imagining what these attractions look like when they see this grotesque noir style art. So yeah, artwork is, I think most people will like it. I think a few people, it might feel a little too creepy for them if they just want a very simple, fun, light game. This might turn them away a little bit, but I think for most people, 90% of the people, they will absolutely love the artwork. And we have it all on, the attractions are all on these tarot-sized cards, so they're much bigger, more room for Andrea to kind of go wild with these attractions. So yeah, that's the artwork.
Then I was able to ask Brian about the weight of this game. Is it heavy? Is it light? Who's going to get into this style game?
This game it's very different for one thing. It's different than what we normally do. Overworld Games is known more for hidden identity and deduction, and this game is not that. It doesn't have any of that, and it's more of a trick-taking game, kind of call it trick-taking-ish. It's not exactly like a trick-taking game, but it's like the closest thing that we can think of. It's more of a hand management, resource management kind of a game, but it's still pretty simple, pretty light. It would be kind of a step up from a gateway game. You could call it a gateway game too. I think the theme is going to appeal to a lot of people as long as they're okay with that slightly darker artwork. And then the gameplay itself is, I mean, it's very quick, just like all of our games. Once you get familiar with the rules and everything, your games probably won't even last 30 minutes. And then your first game, it'll probably be a 45-minute game or so to understand the rules, maybe a little bit more, but should still be under an hour. So it's still a pretty on the lighter side. It's not a really heavy game, not super thinky, but the attractions themselves, we're up to like 45, 46 attractions now with stretch goals, and those are all unique. The artwork's all unique on them. The ability themselves, it's unique. So you only have a couple of those to keep in mind at any one time, but you need to figure out when to use them, how to combo them with others, and that's how you're going to succeed in the game. So there's a lot of that a little bit of that kind of complexity to figure out how to do that, when to make your move, that kind of thing. With the game, but overall it's pretty light, very easy to get into, and then it's just a matter of just understanding those attractions and when to play them.
Now, Barker's Row, they've unlocked a number of stretch goals with meeples, and so I asked Brian to tell us about the unique meeples that come in this game.
The meeples are something that, it's another thing that I think will draw people to it. We have, how many meeples? 50 meeples, somewhere around there, and they go on the 3D chipboard grandstand, so 3D chipboard, custom meeples. Right now we're up to, I think, 11 unique meeple designs, and hopefully we'll get a couple more through the rest of the campaign. I think we will. And so those meeples are also different. Andrea made these as well. So normally the meeples are going to be like happy-go-lucky, fun, cartoony kind of meeples. That's what most of them are. These are with his style, his grotesque noir style, and they're going to be a little darker, and they're going to be on black wooden meeples. The wood will be black, and then these images are going to be on there of his kind of creepy style on these meeples. So they're meeples that I don't think you've seen anywhere else before. And we're also going to offer a little pack of meeples too that you can get after the campaign. That's what backers requested it, so you'll be able to order an extra set of like probably 13 meeples in a pack that you could use for Carcassonne or some other game too. So we're gonna offer that as an add-on that people can pick up too.
And then, of course, I couldn't interview Brian without asking him about Leaders of Euphoria.
Yeah, Leaders of Euphoria. That will be, it's just starting to be shipped out to backers starting this week. So those are, folks should get it around June 1st. The first backers are going to get it then. And then throughout June, that'll be kind of our local fulfillment. We have 2,000 backers on that one. So a lot of games are being shipped out all over the world. We tried to get everybody their game around the same time. So sometime in June, backers will be getting that. And then it'll come out July 26th in stores. And yeah, we think that is going to be a big hit. People are going to love that game. We've got a Rodney Smith Watch It Played video coming out as well on that one. Teach people how to get up and running real quick. And yeah, we're super excited for that one to come out. So if folks are going to Gen Con, Jimmy, I know I've seen you at Gen Con a few years. Hopefully you make it out there. We can hang out and play some games. But anyone else can stop by our booth too and pick up their copy there. It'll be kind of our release game, our Gen Con release game, since it'll come out within, it'll just be coming out a few weeks before Gen Con. So we're excited about that. And of course, Barker's Row. Thanks for having me on. It's been awesome. You've been so good over the years covering our campaigns, giving us some exposure, and we love your videos. Love just working with you. It's always awesome working with you guys. So. One other thing I wanted to kind of announce to your listeners, we haven't officially done a press release on this. We're about to send that out, but your listeners will get a little advance notice of this. We just announced on our live stream for Barker's Row that we'll be doing a game. It'll be coming out next year. It'll be Total Recall, the 1990 movie. So I think probably quite a few of the folks listening have seen that movie. Love that movie. I know Clayton and I grew up around that time. It was almost too. It was an R-rated movie, and I think it was one of those first few that I got to see. So I don't know. It has a special place in my heart. So we created a game around this. It's actually another good cop, bad cop style game, similar to Leaders of Euphoria. where we took the kind of just the basic engine of Good Cop Bad Cop, and then we made it so that players feel like they are in the Total Recall dream, with recall scientists, and when you get shot, you actually leave the dream, which happens in the movie. You wake up, you become a recall scientist. You have a completely new objective, where while everybody else in the dream is still fighting on Mars for to try to knock out Quato or Cohagen. So it's people are gonna love it. You can check out more on TotalRecallGame.com. That'll have the basics, and you can sign up for our pre-fundia, so we'll let you know when that Kickstarter goes live. Still a little ways out there, but we wanted to start building the buzz for that one, because I think people are gonna love that too, especially when they see how cool Leaders of Euphoria is. They're gonna want more, and this is just kind of another way to play Good Cop Bad Cop, and try to get your turbinium and fight for the rebels, or fight for the federal colonies. So Total Recall coming very soon.
All right, I'm here with Ian Schofield. He is the designer, the creator, the illustrator. He is everything behind a game that's on Kickstarter right now called Ravage: Dungeons of Plunder. Well, tell us, give us the 2-minute elevator pitch about the game. What is Ravage all about?
So Ravage is, as I say, it's a high fantasy dungeon crawler, except you're not playing the usual barbarians, dwarves, and elves. You're playing a band of orcs. So there are 4 different castes of orcs. So you've got the barbarians, sorry, not the barbarians, you've got the berserkers, the headhunters, the shamans, and the cultists. So you're playing those guys. So as you're running through the dungeon, rather than doing the typical searching for treasure, you're smashing in the faces of your enemies for their teeth. So the orcs' currency is teeth. So each time you defeat a monster, you gain a set amount of teeth, and you can use those teeth to buy goods from the sneaky goblin. So he has things such as dwarven toes and sort of poisonous trap kits, lucky ears, and various other sort of items and that you can buy from him. One of the main things that I really wanted to make with this game was it's a fast-paced dungeon crawler, and it is a lot more about combat, but you have to be tactical with it, because you get attacks of opportunity. You can aggro other people's monsters. For people that don't know what that is, it's more of a massive online multiplayer term. But you can, so say for example, a monster is coming after you and I shoot it. It's then obviously going to get aggravated by that, and then will come after me instead. So I can pull other people's monsters. So any monsters you pull in the dungeon are actually just coming after you. So you have like a monster track in front of you. But there's lots of different modes you can play the game in. So you can play a solo mode. You can play it cooperatively with friends. So you can also play it with or without a dungeon master on that as well. So it can become the one versus many game. And you can also play the treachery mode as well.
Okay, and then so how does the dungeon evolve as you go? So I know each game kind of does a different way. There might be a pre-setup board or something that the dungeon master would reveal. How does the dungeon evolve in this one?
Well, this one, all the dungeon is within a deck of cards called the Delve deck. So if you can imagine, there's a 2x3 sort of grid on that. So each turn, you pull one of those Delve cards, and you have to place it next to another dungeon tile that is down in front of you. So you're expanding the dungeon as you go and randomly. You also get room cards. So you might pull a card that shows a diagram of what the room looks like, and then you go to the room deck, pull those cards out. So it might be 4 cards that you piece together to make up a big room that kind of slots in with the dungeon as it goes around. So you tend to start your go by drawing. You draw a dungeon card, which is the Delve deck. Then you go on to the Seek Glory phase. So that is either going to be a monster, or you're going to get something like an item. If you're lucky, it might be a cure poison, or it's going to be a trap or something like that that's going to go off. Then it shifts on to the next phase, which is your ravage phase. So you can get to do several things in that go, but you tend to do, you can perform 2 actions. So you can move, you can attack, you can search for plunder. You can also do something called blood tribute, which is where you take 1 health, so you lose a health in order to gain 2 energy. So the idea is that you're going to be running around trying to stop the flow of monsters coming in to get to a set point. So every quest is different. So some quests will have a kind of layout for the initial dungeon, which are detailed in the rulebook. Other ones will be saying, place a card in in the deck, X amount of cards down per player. So it kind of scales nicely for the group playing. And also it'll be like an end-level boss or something. You have to complete something in a set amount of time before something comes out, or whatever the scenario is. So so that's what happens within your ravage phase. But one of the other nice elements of it is the leveling up. So on the attack dice that you've got, it's quite simply put as 3 different coloured dice. So you've got a blue dice, which is a low, a red dice, which is a medium attack, and then a black dice, which is super heavy. And there are energy symbols on 2 of those dice. And if you roll those energy, then you claim energy. So you get that on attack and defense rolls. So once your energy goes up, you can then use your ability cards. So the Berserker might use his Berserker Axe. Somebody like the Shaman might use Life Drain or something like that for a set amount of energy. But once you've used that energy, so say for example your energy goes down 2 points because you've used that, your experience goes up 2 points. So it's a very simple system of leveling up. So once you get to 4 points of experience, you can level up one of your cards. So you just literally flip over the card you want to level up.
Well, I can tell that you've done your homework. You've been working hard on this. The artwork just looks incredible. I'm looking at the rule book right now. Everything looks well laid out and ready to go. So it looks like you're doing pretty well on Kickstarter right now, right?
I think it was about 93% the last time I checked.
And then you still got a number of days to go, like almost a month. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it went on. What was it, last Thursday?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been really nice to see that the people have reacted to it really well.
So tell us, if everything goes well, you fund what you're going to, and you go on. When can we expect to get this game in our hands? What's all that look like?
This will be about November, December time.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Because it's a bit different because I'm the artist, and most people come to Kickstarter with something they need the money to make the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas mine's a little bit different because I've been doing all the art and everything else as well. Most of the game is already done.
Well, that's awesome. Well, it looks like it's just a well put together game, plays 1 to 5, and what is that, 30 to 90 minutes? So it looks like this is just a good one to check out.
Yeah, I mean the solo play is you can do that in like 30 minutes. It's quite good.
Well, good for you, man. I'm excited for you. I mean, to want a game like this, and then to be able to create it yourself and be the mind and the designer behind it. That's pretty incredible. So I'm happy to see this work out for you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, this is Ian Schofield with Ravage Dungeons of Plunder. Go on Kickstarter and check it out today. And hopefully we'll be able to maybe interview you a little bit later on down the road as you're getting ready to deliver this finished Kickstarter.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jimmy.
Okay, for my main segment today, I want to talk about learning board games. Let me describe a scenario for you. You come over to game night. Somebody says we want to play a new game. And to your horror, you sit down at the table and they crack open the rule book and they start to read. And an hour goes by, an hour and a half goes by, and you have yet to play your very first turn of the game. It's getting late, and you are trying to figure out in your head how you can come up with an excuse to get out of here because this game is not going anywhere. How do you teach board games the right way? That's what I want to talk about today because I myself have made a lot of missteps and I've probably turned off a few people to playing board games because I did it the wrong way. Now, the opposite is if you could teach somebody a board game in a way that gets them playing quickly and they understand how to play and they get the theme and the idea and the cool mechanics, you can take a game that might not even be that good, but they can take and get into this game and start playing and they love it. At Gen Con a few years ago, we had both experiences here. We had somebody that loved their game that they were demoing for us, taught us the game, and we got into it and loved it. And then I've also had the demos where I sat down at the table and the person teaching me didn't really know all the rules, never really told us the theme, and just kind of hoped that we figured it out. And we walked away from the board game saying, meh, I don't know if it was that good. I don't want to play that game again. Now that is terrible. It's absolutely terrible to think that someone's opinion on a game can be totally skewed just because the person teaching them didn't do it right. So I want to give you some tips today on how to teach board games. The first place that I want to start is on telling you some things that you do not want to do. This is how you do not want to teach a board game. The first thing that you do not want to do is sit down and read the rule book to people at the table. The only person that finds that interesting, when you read the rule book is the person reading the rule book because you're seeing it for yourself. You're looking at diagrams in the rule book and things are making sense. But when you're reading a rule book, 9 times out of 10, the people sitting around the table are not getting it. You're creating an opportunity for them to zone out, disconnect, and then you're only going to get angry when you have to come back and say, yeah, I read that. Yeah, I explained that. And everybody at the table's thinking, I don't learn that way. I fell asleep. I was checking my Facebook and I missed out on what you're talking. So please do not teach games by simply reading the rule book. The second thing that you don't want to do when you're teaching a game is have multiple teachers. I can't tell you the frustration that this creates in me when I'm trying to learn a game and there are 2 or 3 different teachers, right? Like one dude is telling you how to play the game and then someone interjects and starts talking about some other random place in the board game or some random rule that the first teacher was not talking about. And then what happens is then there's a third teacher that says, oh yeah, and don't forget at the end of the game you can do this. And then like this multiple teacher thing drives me crazy and nobody's really understanding what's going on. There needs to be one teacher that's teaching someone how to play the game. The third thing that I would say do not do is don't try to explain every single detail. Like sometimes in board games, there's a special scenario of something special that might happen if you just so happen to have done this. If that's the case, then why don't we just wait and tell us about those things when that comes up? Or you could mention in passing, hey, this could happen, and if we get there, I'll tell you the rules. There's something about people that try to tell every single detail that just bogs down the gameplay, and half of the time people are not going to remember what you say anyways when you're explaining the rules, so why go through all of that painstaking time to explain that when no one's going to remember it anyways? And the last thing, the most important thing, when you're trying to teach someone how to play a game is please do not beat me by taking advantage of a rule that you have not explained yet. Please do not beat me at this new game that you're teaching me by going over or by using some hidden strategy or hidden objective that I didn't know existed yet. Like that would drive me crazy for you to do that. I'm not saying you can't beat me the first time you play this game, but please don't beat me at a game or do something that I had no clue that I could even do. Now that kind of contradicts my second thing where I said don't explain everything, but at the same time, if there is some glaring omission that you've made in explaining the rules, I'm just going to walk away frustrated and say that game is stupid. So don't do that to me. I asked this question online and I got a lot of feedback from people on how they think you should teach board games. And this guy named Mike gave us some great suggestions. he said number one thing that he does, and this is how he explains games all the time, is he says you need to explain first, how do you win the game? And I think that's so true. If I don't know how to win the game, then I'm not going to care about anything else along the way. Number two is he says you need to tell people how the end of the game is triggered. Is it a certain number of rounds? Is it when somebody gets this many victory points? What is it that causes the end of the game? And then the third thing is, what do I do on my turn? And I think I totally agree with Mike in all of his points. I think that this is exactly how you should teach the game. How do I win? What triggers the end? And what can I do? And as long as I know those things, then I'm not going to be surprised by the end of the game. I'm going to know what I should have been doing the entire game, and I know what I can do right now. I think all of those things are great. A guy named Chris Strain wrote a blog post about teaching board games, and I really suggest that you go online and that you look him up. And he talks about ultimately that you should be worrying about how people learn the game. Are they visual? Are they auditory? Or are they kinesthetic? Kinesthetic? I don't know how you say that. But basically, are they a person that learns by doing? And so there are different ways that people learn how to play board games. But ultimately, I feel like if they knew how to win, they knew what they're able to do on a turn, then they could get into playing this game a whole lot quicker. Now, obviously, I'm going to suggest that you tell people that they need to watch a video review of how to play the game first. And there's some great resources out there like Watch It Played or John Gets Games. And one of my favorites that I found recently is this guy called The Dicey Review. Go on YouTube, look him up. I just really enjoy the way this guy teaches board games. And then there's even an audio podcast. You can go to How to Play Podcast and listen to, he's got different episodes where he just teaches you how to play one game. And so you can listen to that podcast and follow along with the game in front of you and figure out how to play this new board game. I don't know how you teach board games, but I really want to encourage you to think it through. Every time I've thrown a new board game out there and just sat down to read the rules, I've had a terrible experience. So don't do that. Do that before game day and know the games that you're going to play when everybody shows up. You already know how to play, or at least you have a good grasp on how to play. To me, that's the best way to teach board games. All right, that's it for episode number 18. If you've got any tips for me on how to teach board games, then go to Facebook and look us up, Board Game Closet, and find this episode. And then right underneath it, tell us how to teach board games. I want to hear your tips and tricks for the best ways to do that. And as always, I would love it if you shared this podcast with people. Tell them about it. Post on Facebook groups and share it on Twitter, whatever it is. All right, we'll see you next week on Tuesday for our next episode of the Board Game Closet. And until then, let's play some great board games.
Thank you for listening to the Board Game Closet podcast. Make sure to subscribe to get new episodes every single Tuesday. Visit BoardGameCloset.com to find out more.